Hey guys, we are working on moving from your auto watch or your check-in, we've been calling it, into loose leash walking. It is a wonderful and easy transition. The idea is, first of all, you need to have your dog connecting with you. So take that auto watch, bring it on the road, or that check-in, we've been calling it. Take your check-in, bring it on the road, bring it to all new places. See if you can stand there and have your dog automatically checking back with you all the time. Once that's happening, we can start taking that and turning it into moving together and staying connected. So the second big chunk of your check-in, sorry, I have cats and dogs at my feet. Your check-in is starting to move together, and that is building duration in your engagement, is what I like to call it. So when the dog and you are connected, that is engagement. And it's really nice that they can turn and find that in all different places, was the first step. Then second piece is going to be, can you turn and find that? And then as we move, can we move together? The duration of how many steps that they can do with you is going to need to be built up slowly and inconsistently. I don't like to be predictable with this one. Because then they get into a pattern of, like, I check in, that gets you moving, and then I'm going to do 5 steps and then kind of get lost and come back on the 7th step because that's the one you feed me on. So I want to make sure that I'm, like, sometimes 2 steps, sometimes 1, sometimes 7. If at any point the dog gets distracted and disengages from you, I don't mind if they're, like, sniffing the ground and doing things. They don't need to be staring at me. Your criteria is up to you. But if they pull to the end of the leash, that for sure 100% of the time means I'm going to stop. One of the best and fastest ways to teach your dog to pull on the leash is to move forward when your leash is tight. So anytime your leash goes tight, you need to stop and wait. That's you too. And have your dog come back into a slack leash, because otherwise, if your leash is tight and you're moving forward, your dog is convinced that pulling is the way to get you to move with them. And that is just the, like, mechanics of how that works. So if your leash goes tight at all, even a little bit, and I don't care if they're pulling or not, if the leash goes from happy face to straight, I was trying to make it, like, I don't know, straight face, that is a sign that you need to stop completely. And that will keep your dog from learning to pull. A lot of people tell me, oh, my dog doesn't pull, so they're not too bad. And when I watch them walking, they are walking on a tight leash. Even though the dog there isn't pressure on that leash, people get used to the leash being tight at all times. And that is a very slippery slope to the dog starting to lean in more and more and more. So if my leash is smiling, I can move forward. If it is not smiling, we don't move anywhere. It really doesn't come into play that much, honestly, if we're just looking for engagement. So for me, I use a longer line with my puppies, and then when they start mastering this, I'm going to just choke up on that line. I want to be able to give them enough leash that they have the ability to find loose leash. So a lot of people also have this awful habit of holding the dog and even wrapping it around their hand, and then the dog is over here, and there's basically not enough leash for them to be loose anyways. We're giving them like 1 foot of leash, and we're holding on as if, like, we're trying to hold them up from gravity or something, and it's crazy, and we end up building a sore arm and a really bad habit. So what I want to do is have enough leash that the dog can be on a loose leash successfully, and I prefer not to have so much leash that it's going to get tangled underneath their feet. I do, like I say, I have a 10-foot lead here. I just kind of gather it up in my hand if I want to do connected walking at any point. And besides that, we're walking around and I can let that out and back in and have her meander as long as she's not hitting the end of the leash or pulling it through my hands. But it does take some mastery and skill to do that. So we're just going to start today with your connected walking coming from that check-in. So the first piece is that leash length, finding the nice leash length. Let me just find my clicker in here. And deciding what side you want your dog to walk on. So for me, I want PETA on my right side. You can switch sides, but it is easier for the dog to learn if you're always on the same side every time at the beginning. And then that can adjust as you go. But I'm I'm going to hold the leash and the clicker in my left hand so that my right hand can be engaged with the dog. So that's the way I'm going to feed her, is with my right hand, because she's on my right side. If my dog is on the left side and I'm feeding with the right hand, what you're doing is feeding across your body, and eventually your dog is going to end up coming around and being in front of you and cutting you off all the time because the food is coming from the other side. So whatever side is the dog you're wanting the dog to walk on, it can also be helpful to do check-in with the food and the dog on the same side, and then that means your leash and your clicker are in the other hand. And you can figure out how to hold this, but I kind of gather it up and then hold the clicker between my thumb and index finger here. And then I'm just going to wait for a check-in, and I'm going to click, and here's where I change. I don't feed to the ground after the first click or two. I'm going to start going, okay, we just warmed up, checking in, and then I'm going to click only when they look at me. And then when they look at me, I'm going to now, instead of clicking when they first look at me, I'm going to up the criteria. So when they first look at me, the first couple times I'm going to click and then feed to the ground. And then once that is down pat and it's warmed up nicely, then I want to wait until they look at me. And now instead of clicking, instead of giving them the "you got the treat" marker, I'm going to now praise them and use praise to tell them, you're doing the right thing, keep doing it. I'm going to praise them, and then as soon as I praise them, I'm going to back up and move a little bit, and if they move in the same direction, then that's where I'm going to click if we're moving and connected. And I'm going to start with it backing up a little bit, and once it's backing up, then I can wait until they look at me and start moving forwards and sideways and all different ways, as long as I'm not shoving into the dog. So I have clicker and leash in one hand, and I'm going to click when she looks at me, just like we've been doing, and drop it on the ground. Click when she looks at me and drop it on the ground. Now next time she looks at me, good girl, and I'm going to move. And if she moves as well, then I can click and drop it on the ground. I still like to drop it on the ground at this stage, good girl, to give them a break from me so that they're interested in coming back to me. So same thing again, I'm going to actually, good girl, wait till she's looking, which she is. You can see I have a nice smiley face in my leash. If it actually were to get longer, we would get tangled. And I can do this with food in my hand as long as it stays still, or I'm going to take food out of my hand is even better. I'm going to look at her and she's looking at me. Good girl, good girl. And I'm going to click for a couple steps together there. She can go grab that treat. Good girl, very nice. And we got to do a couple steps together at a time, building up those steps in between. Good job. Good job. And you can see we can start adding in fun little turns and just seeing if she's able to follow my body. Good girl. Yeah. I like to do turns with the dog on the outside of the circle. So instead of what a lot of people want to do, I don't know why, is turn like this. You can see how awkward it is for the dog. You're a good girl. Don't do it. I would much rather have my dog turn around me so that it's nice flowy like this. Good. Than with them on the inside. But play around and just start building up how long you can stay connected, and then give your dog lots of breaks. So we're gonna do good girl, just a little bit more. Good girl. Good. Tell her to go, and then when she looks back up at me, I'm gonna give her permission to go and sniff. Good girl. Okay, go sniff. Go on, go sniff. Good girl. And she gets to go and play around. Again, she's not allowed to pull on the leash or tighten it, but take lots of breaks, especially in new places. Your dog is going to stay connected, do a couple of those reps, and then when they're doing really well, instead of waiting till they're fading, tell them to go and sniff. Like, give them enough leash to go and smell something delightful in the grass. And then when they turn back to you, do a couple more reps, and eventually you get down the road a little bit. Don't expect it to go smooth or to be able to go places like from place A to place B or long walks at this point without them pulling on the leash. It's going to require a lot of stopping and a lot of patience, and that is puppyhood. So instead of having a goal of where you're going to walk or how far, instead work on how great your walking is coming, and that will get you further faster. If you take the first year probably to work on this, you'll have great walking, and you'll have it nailed down by the time they're hitting heavy adolescence. So good luck, and I'd love to see your videos of moving together.